Hey guys, you're listening to Divine Circle. It's me, your host, Morgan Hardman. Today's episode is going to be a great episode. I have my first woman guest, and also she happens to be my therapist. I'm super excited to have her with us today. Miss Tracy, can you please introduce yourself to the world?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Tracy Taris. I am a wife and mother, and I am a disciple of Jesus. I am
Mm.
also a licensed marriage and family therapist and a writer.
Oh, love it. She put author on the back of that. I love that. Newly author.
Yes.
Congratulations on that. We're going to jump into that a little later. So welcome and thank you so much for clearing your busy schedule to jump on here and bless the world. You have been a blessing to me and I have to share you with the world.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Morgan.
Of course. So let's go ahead. I like to jump into it. I've been seeing you for about 5 years now, and you have completely helped me transform my life, my mind, and just really dig deep into my childhood traumas. And so that alone has been a very fulfilling feeling. A lot of people are, we talk about this all the time, especially in the Black community, where, a lot of people are scared, nervous, and they don't want to see a therapist. Why do you think that is? You being a therapist, what have you seen as far as why people are so scared to seek help?
Well, I think there are many reasons why people are afraid to seek help, but I think one of the biggest ones is the unknown. And so, one of the
Mm.
ways that I usually put my clients to rest or at make their minds be more at ease is to let them know that I believe that their answers are already inside of them. Like,
Mm.
especially as believers, we have the Holy Spirit, and God won't withhold information from us when it is helpful to us. So, what I usually tell people is my job is to help you to uncover everything that's blocking the truth or that about yourself, which you already know. So, my
Mm.
job as a therapist is to help you to weed through all of the debris and weed through all of the belief systems to help you get down to the truth of who you are, but also help you get down to the truth of what's going on so that you can have clarity, healing, and get to the place and the person that you were originally created to be.
Yes, and you've done that and more for me. I will never forget. You and I were introduced through one of your amazing friends and clients. When I met you, Tracy, I was in a very, I don't want to say dark place. I was in a very confused place
Yeah.
because I was pregnant with Araya. And I was very scared and nervous to become a mother of a daughter
Mm.
because, I didn't have such a great upbringing and I didn't have such a great experience. Me being the only girl, my mother was very mean to me, very abusive. And so I was really scared to have her. There were times I wanted to commit suicide while I was pregnant, and that's really hard to say. But I was scared that I was not going to be a good enough mother to her and that I would love my son more than her because I
Yeah.
had loved him for so long. Um, what advice could you give people that may be going through something similar? What do you say to that? Because I mean, you helped me through it, and I'm thankful.
Yeah, you're welcome, and my pleasure, Morgan. It depends on who the person is and what they are going through. A lot of times, especially for new moms, I give them a heads up. Like if they have gone through trauma, sometimes the age at which they experience the trauma, some of it will come back when their kid or their daughter
Mm,
are the same age. And so it
mm,
just really depends on the person's story and some of the things that they've experienced. And then I just walk with them. Like, again, my job is to kind of shine a light on the dark and hidden places, but those things are there. The answers are in there. So you have to just kind of tell your story. You, as a client, tell your story.
Mhm.
And my job is to decipher the elements of that story. What contributed to this experience? What contributed to that experience? And how are you, as the person who experienced all of these things, conceptualizing it in your head? What are the lies that you're telling yourself that are not true? Lies based on the trauma that you've received, maybe lies based on what your parent or some other caregiver told you about yourself that wasn't
Mhm.
true. Like when
Right.
kids are traumatized, they're usually traumatized by parents who were traumatized. And that's not to excuse the parents' behavior at all, but it is helpful to know that, okay, this person that raised me really didn't have all the faculties they needed, or really didn't have all the tools
Wow.
they needed, and unfortunately I was the recipient of some of that. And so
Mm.
you, as a client, you have to figure out, how do I step out of that and not allow it to define me? How do I
Mm.
become who God originally meant for me to be, by stepping out of some of these definitions that do not belong.
Wow. That's what I needed to hear. I think that's what the world needed to hear. The reason, I created Divine Circle is so that we can touch as many lives as possible. And through every episode, I want it to be a life changing experience for the listener. I want them to find healing in these episodes. So I want to dig deep with you. I want to dig deep. We've touched on before the different stages of a man. And I know we kind of jumped ahead a little bit, and we'll kind of go back and, dig more deep into my story and my healing. But you once told me, when we sat down for a session, you and me, about the different stages of a man. So that way I could really understand my husband, because at the time I could not understand why he worked so much. And, it was work, 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 work. And for me, especially being pregnant, what about me? That's how I felt. And so when you broke down to me the different stages of a man's life, it it kind of made me back off of him a little bit. It kind of
Mhm.
made me back off of, hey, what about me? Spend time with me, love me. What about me? Like, I'm going through this pregnancy, and I'm going through a depression while I'm pregnant. I need you to understand, and I need you to be there. Can
Yeah.
we talk about that? Can we talk about the different stages of a man's life, and can we go from the first stage all the way to, I believe there's 5 stages? Can we
Mhm.
really dig deep into that, because I think that could save a lot of marriages.
Okay, yeah. So the stages are called the seasons of Adam, and it is not my concept. I actually
Mm-hmm.
attended a workshop for women. My friend Nick Bogan, she had put something together based on a series of workshops that she had joined. And so the
Amazing.
seasons of Adam, I forget the original author. I'll tell you about it later, or text it to you so you can show notes. So the seasons of Adam is a concept that states a man's life correlates with the Bible from Genesis all the way to Revelations. So the first season is spring, and that has to do with Adam in the garden. And so in a
Mm-hmm.
man's life, that's from birth to about the end of grade school. And so if you think of Adam and Eve in the garden, they were very free, they were very playful. And so when you think of a man, that's when they're little boys, just outside playing. They love to be outdoors. They love to jump off things and just be
Right.
adventurous. And so when you're
Mm-hmm.
thinking of this as a woman, think of your son in that stage of life.
Mm.
The next season
Right.
is summer. And summer correlates with the Old Testament, and the character of the Old Testament for summer would be David. And David fought a lot of wars. It was all about conquering this and
Mm.
conquering that. It was all about,
Yeah.
the horses, and, how many adventures, and what can I overcome, and what can I conquer. And then the season
Mm.
after summer is fall. And that's where most women that are still raising children find themselves. When you were talking about your husband at the time, this is the season that he was in. And the fall season is about
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. And Jesus was all about preparing uh, a place for his children. He was all about building the kingdom. He was all about preparing for when he wouldn't be here anymore, and leaving his family members set up for success, to enjoy the kingdom and to make it home basically. And when you think of a man in that season, that's usually so summer goes from preteen probably to like mid 20s for some guys, late 20s, and then fall, the Jesus season is all about the work. Like men are
Mm,
working, they're putting a roof over your head, over our heads, over their
right.
children's heads. They're putting food on the table, and that's primarily where their focus is. Like Jesus was very focused on preparing. So if you're in the season where your husband is working a lot, try to understand that his mindset is to prepare. He wants it's the last thing a
Hmm.
man wants is for his family to be, destitute or homeless and just kind of out there. So you will see
Mm,
that he's working a lot, trying to put food on the table, trying to put a roof over his head. And a lot of times where women make the mistake of nagging is here. This is one area. The next area is kind of a
yeah,
like two, but
that
just
was
nag
me.
yeah, nagging, and really it's not a personal thing. It's just he has a job to do, which is provide for his family because he knows he's not gonna
Hmm.
be here. He knows at some point he's going to retire and there's not gonna be anybody to put that food on the table. He knows at some point he's not going to be here, period, because we all have an
Right.
expiration date. And so the season
Hmm.
after fall is winter. This is where a lot of nagging can happen as well because the man kind of goes into his proverbial cave. This is like, so from the time of marriage, which may be anywhere from late 20s, or early 30s, all the way to retirement, the man is in the Jesus.
Mm,
And then in the next stage, it's still the Jesus stage, but it's the winter season where he goes into his cave and he starts to doubt, like, who am I? Is this all there is to life? Is this
mm,
all I'm going to accomplish? Is this what my life has turned into? It's not that he's dissatisfied, it's just the normal season that every man goes through. And the best thing that you can do as a wife is to just kind of be there and listen. Don't offer advice unless he asks for it. Just kind of be a support.
mm.
Most of us make the
That's tough
mistake.
though.
Yeah, it is. Why do you say
Yeah,
so?
it's
Why is that?
tough. I say that because it's like you, as a wife, it's almost as if we should be there for him. I actually have a friend today that called me who I was like, your husband's in that stage, the stage you're talking about right now. I told her, I'm like, your husband's in that stage. Did you read the article that I sent you? You have to read that because that is the stage of life that your husband's in.
Mhm.
And, he's questioning himself because I remember you talking to me about this. And it's just hard because you want to be there for them and you want to understand what is going on. Like, snap out
Yeah.
of it. I'll let you finish touching on that, but that's I know that's hard for a lot of women to just back off and not ask questions because it's almost like, okay, you worked all this time, you've done all this, you've built this empire, but then now you don't want to talk, now you just want to mope. That's difficult. How does someone just stand by and just not ask questions?
Well, this is the stage where a lot of divorce ends up happening. And it's not that you
Mm,
don't ask questions. You ask questions um based on what he's telling you. So you allow him to initiate, like you can check in and say, "Babe, how are you
yeah.
doing? Is there anything that you need? Is there anything I can do for you?" Just to be a support because a lot of times they will open up and speak, and then you ask questions based on that. But the questions that you're asking, it's not to assuage your own anxiety, it's to be a support
Hmm.
and a help, to him. The reason a lot of times people end up divorced in this stage is we've seen the cliched, older guy with the convertible car and the younger woman, on his arm and things like that. For sometimes that is a cliche, and sometimes that is what's going on. Like, but most men are not just looking for a younger woman. What is happening is a lot of these younger women are still in the stage with all these Davids who are just Davids and
Mm,
just what building can I jump off? What can I conquer? And they're with men
right.
who are not settled down. So here comes this older guy He's had his career. He may be, well established in his career. He's already got, a good foundation and it's going on. And she thinks he's awesome. So here you have this younger
Mm.
woman going, "You're so awesome. You're so great." And wife at home is
Right.
like, "You're going to get it together," and stuff like that. And so
Yeah.
a lot of men end up gravitating toward that, not because she's younger or prettier or anything like that, but because she's exhibiting signs of understanding and signs of support. So I
Mm.
always tell women to just be there as a support and as a friend, and let him, because he can only work through this with God. He can only come out through this within his relationship with God, or in his own way, however that is going to look to him.
Hmm.
And the best thing that you can do is to be a support.
How long does that usually take for them to come out of that?
It depends on the man. It depends on, it could be
Mm.
anywhere from a few months to a few years. And so just
Oof.
allowing, I mean, I think it's a good idea for him to go and speak with a therapist or a pastoral counselor, where he has some
Hmm.
kind of guidance to help him walk through that. But when he gets to the other side, so after winter, it's spring again. So it comes full circle. And spring, the character in the Bible for spring again is, well, the part in the Bible that's winter is when Jesus goes to the cross, because he does go in the
Mm.
tomb, and then he comes out of the tomb, he resurrects. But a lot of men don't resurrect. Like, some men can get
Mm.
into that stage and stay in that stage, especially if they start doing things trying to recapture their youth, and they kind of regress,
Mm.
plow through and work through, especially if they have help. Then they'll get back, they'll resurrect, they'll come out of the tomb, and they'll get
Wow.
back to the spring. And the character in spring is God. God is sovereign,
Mm.
almighty. Most men do not get back to the spring stage, because they either get
Yeah.
stuck in the winter stage, or they just kind
Hmm.
of throw in the towel and try to start over. And so, like, if you think about God, like, if you think of man in the God stage, like, he just kind of sits back and just surveying his kingdom, surveying what he's built, enjoying his wife and children and probably grandchildren at this stage.
Mm.
He doesn't give advice unless he's asked. He's way more comfortable saying no to things. He doesn't sign up for everything that comes his way.
Right.
He's
Right. Right.
really at ease being himself. And
Yeah.
so from Genesis all the way, through the end of the Bible, a man has different seasons that correlates to the different aspects of the Bible. So the funny thing about this
Mm.
is we go through those seasons as well. But for women,
Oof.
according to the person who came up with this concept, for women, we go through these seasons every month.
That's
Yeah.
funny. I'm sure we do. Of course we do. And how is our season? How's that broken down?
But like on a month, just all of those different things. Like, we want
Oh, so okay, so we go through it on a monthly
the
basis. Okay.
playful adventure, like, what can we accomplish? How can we prepare? How can we take care of everyone? We go into our cave, at that time, and we're kind of
Yep.
selling, and it
Yep.
just depends on
I've
how you
I've
handle
been in
it.
those I've been in
Yeah.
those stages before where I don't want to talk to anybody on the phone. I used to go through them a lot actually before I got married, where it'll be like a good 3 weeks where I'm just sitting in my room and I don't want to come out. And I'm just, that's it. That's just what I'm going through. And I'll come out of it and then I'll look refreshed, renewed, and restored. Like I just had a makeover, you know?
Yeah.
So I've gone through that. I did something a little different this time. I actually took a poll because I thought it was awesome that I was going to be sitting down with my therapist and a therapist. And so I took a poll on what most women wanted to talk about. And so I had
Okay.
quite a few women who wanted to touch on narcissism and being in a relationship or a marriage with someone that's a narcissist. And so I've actually done my research on narcissism, and I feel like that word is kind of thrown out there very disrespectfully. Because I think it's really a condition. I think it's really a medical condition. I think it's a disability as well. And I think it goes hand in hand with depression, bipolarism. I think it's another sickness. And so I want to touch on narcissism because, like I said, I've been doing a lot of research on it, and a lot of women are going through that where they're either in a relationship with someone that's a narcissist, and they don't know how to cope or even really exist in that relationship. Can we touch on that a little bit? I know we've never talked about it before, but I mean, I'm sitting down with a therapist and these are questions that are coming in that people want to know about. So,
Yeah, narcissistic personality disorder is a personality disorder. It's a character disorder. And
mm,
what that means is the person's character is out of whack. Like it's
mm,
misshapen. Like we are created for relationship. Like
yeah.
God is a God of relationship. He's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And the Bible talks
Mm-hmm.
about how it's not good for man to be alone. So we're created for relationships. So anytime you operate outside of how you're created, it's going to disorder things. So with the narcissist,
Mm,
it's all about him, like it's or her. It's me, me, me.
mm-hmm.
So it's there's a deep, deep-seated selfishness that is invading the person's heart and invading the person's
Mm,
personality and even their character. And so what's hard
wow.
about narcissists, especially in the church, is because a lot of people are told, like a lot of women, like when they're married to narcissists, it could be a very abusive relationship. Like if you're
You
in
know,
a
I
relationship.
just realized that too, that I didn't even realize when I was reading and just doing my research on it, because I've literally I see so many women say that they were with a narcissist, and I'm like, what does that mean? Because the word gets thrown around, and it's an actual it's an abusive relationship too.
Yeah, it can, yeah, it can be very abusive. So the best thing that you can do is to set boundaries. Like most people think of
Mm,
boundaries as, how much am I going to put up with and what am I going to let in and keep out? And that's a small part of boundaries. The bigger part of boundaries has more to do with all of my thoughts, words, feelings, and behaviors and resources belong to me, and all
mm-hmm.
of your thoughts, words, feelings, behaviors, and resources. And by resources, I mean time, energy, money. Like when you're married, you probably share a lot of your resources, like
Yeah.
money, and sometimes, you can share energy and things like that. And so when you look at it like that, whether the person is a narcissist or not, whatever it is they're saying, whatever it is they say they're thinking or doing, that's on them. You never have to go in and rescue anyone from anything. You never have to go in and change a person's mind. Only that person can change their mind. And so what I was going to say about narcissism in the church is that a lot of women, Christian women and men might be married to someone that's a narcissist
Mm-hmm.
and they're told to hang tight, that God hates divorce,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that,
Mm.
but then they're not given tools to recognize what it is they're dealing,
Right.
and it's like it may be that you might have to separate. Like if you're in a relationship and someone's
Mm.
violating your boundaries, constantly breaking vows and whatnot. Of course, if a vow is broken, the Bible talks about, what that looks like
You're
with regard.
biblical, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
biblically speaking, if you find yourself in a relationship where it is really abusive and you don't know whether you're coming or going, you may have to separate from that. You may not get a divorce. It may not necessarily be a divorce. It may be, but in order to set boundaries and in order to communicate, what your needs are, and in order to advocate for yourself, it might not be a good idea to stay under the same roof until some changes can
Yeah.
happen, until some healing can be acquired,
Mm-hmm.
until some boundaries can be set in motion and respected. Like God didn't
Yeah.
one of the best books I ever read was called Jesus, the Greatest Therapist Who Ever Lived. And
Mm.
the reason I read that book was an older colleague was telling me how, as a therapist, you never want to work harder than your client. You offer
Wow.
what you have to offer and leave it up to them to receive it. And what I got out of that book was that Jesus had really good boundaries. He offered healing, he offered wisdom, he offered things to help people, and he left it up to them, to take it. Like when you're
Right.
in a relationship with a narcissist or all of the personality disorders are
Yeah.
difficult
Yeah.
in a relationship with someone that has a personality disorder. But when you're in relationship with someone who's suffering from that, offer up whatever it is you have to offer up. Make suggestions
Hmm.
if they ask
Yeah.
you for advice and things like that, and then just leave it. If you're tethered to the outcome, you're just going to create this whirlwind of confusion and
Hmm.
chaos that's just going to keep
Wow.
the dynamic going. So you have to stand
Mm.
firm in who you are, stand firm in what you believe, set the boundaries and set consequences, and stand by those consequences. Figure out what that's
Yeah.
going to look like. And I would say be in communication with a therapist about this, or a pastoral counselor, or someone older
Yeah,
in the
for
faith
sure.
that, has experience in helping people navigate these kinds of relationships.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I hope that that helps somebody because I got about 15 questions on that. And so I'm like, okay, I'll touch on that. When we jump on, I also got a few questions on connection. How do you create a connection with your spouse or your loved one, whoever you're in a relationship with? How do you create that connection with your spouse when there's been so many offenses? How does one come out of that? Because for me, I think covenant is so important. And I think that my covenant with God is so important. And my marriage is far from perfect. But one thing that I do daily in my marriage is I die to self. And I work on the things that I feel and that my husband may feel that I need to change. And I'm very open and honest. I'm an open book. If there's something that I'm not doing, I want to make change in. If there's something I'm doing wrong, I want to know. I enjoy constructive criticism. So, how does someone come back from after, so much trauma, or whether it be offenses that happen on both parts, the woman and the man? How does the man trust again? How does the woman trust? What is your advice on that? Cuz I know I've also had marriage counseling with you before, and you spoke to us about a connection. I forget what the name of it was. It was some type of connection thing. I think a lot of people can benefit from that also.
Okay. Yeah, and if I'm remembering correctly, it was a communication tool. A
There
lot
you
of times,
go.
yeah, when people come in for couples counseling, what they'll
Hmm.
come in saying, this has happened in our marriage, that has occurred. And it might be, an infidelity, it might be an inability to communicate where there's arguing all the time and lots of
Yeah.
conflict. But at the heart of all of that, like all those things are symptoms of something
Mm.
deeper going on.
Right.
And in my years, I've been seeing clients since 2005, because they make
Mm.
us see clients when we're getting our master's degree in psychology. And so, what I've come to realize is that most of the things can be boiled down to a loss of intimacy and a loss of friendship.
Mm.
So when you ask, what do you need to do to come back from that? There's lots of different things, but if you keep your eye on, well, how do we renew our friendship? If you work on
Wow.
renewing the friendship, you will grow in the intimacy, because people that
Mm.
are friends and people that are intimately connected, they don't typically have a problem with communication. Like communication problems is
Right.
usually a symptom of something. And so they may not
Hmm.
agree, but they're okay with disagreeing, and they're okay with each other being each other. So there's lots of different communication tools that you can use. And so one of them is called, that I use, is from this assessment called Prepare Enrich. Prepare Enrich is an assessment tool that I use where couples will go online and they take this assessment of their relationship. Like, what is your experience of the relationship? And then it will give you a report
Mm.
on, your communication, your conflict, sex, finances, children, family of origin issues. It
Wow.
covers the gamut to help you figure out what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. And this tool, it isn't my tool. It's a tool that's been around for probably 40
Yeah.
years now. And it used to be used for people that were engaged to help them to see, okay, more than likely this is where you are going to have problems. So here are some tools,
Mm.
interventions to
Can
address
you
them.
give that name where they can find that again? Because
It's
I think
prepare.
that's really important for people that are
Uh,
stepping into marriage.
yeah, it's prepare enrich, and it's prepare hyphen enrich, and you can go online
Mm-hmm.
and find them. But in don't just go on and take the assessment. Find a therapist that does it, and or find a church, because a lot of churches use it. You don't have to be a
Awesome.
therapist to help people with it. Usually there'll be someone at a church that is a pastoral counselor that will help people with it. But one of the
That's awesome.
interventions is called the three wishes exercise, and the
Mm-hmm.
idea is that communication hasn't happened until the message sent is the message received. What usually happens when
Mm.
couples have conflict and difficulty communicating is that someone will bring an issue to the table to discuss. And the person receiving it will hear whatever it is they're hearing and then respond. And then the person who originally brought the communication is saying, well, that's not what I'm saying, or that's not what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're off to the races arguing about what wasn't said or what wasn't meant. What the
Right.
three exercise does is it looks at communication from two different things has to happen in
Mm.
order for effective communication to occur. One is
Mm-hmm.
assertiveness, and assertiveness means
Okay.
that I state what it is I want in a respectful and direct manner. Assertiveness is not passiveness, where I'm always wrong,
Mm-hmm.
you're always right. It's not passive aggressive,
Yeah.
where I say one thing but mean another, or I expect you to read my mind. And it's not aggressive, where there's yelling and screaming or even pushing and shoving. It's just simply stating what you want in a direct and respectful manner. And then the other component is listening, and there's active listening, where you, as a receiver, actively listens to what's going on. You're not formulating your rebuttal. You're not formulating an excuse or a response. You're actually listening to the words that's coming out of the person's mouth. And then reflective
Right.
listening is where you reflect back what you heard. So, what I heard you
Mm.
say is this, that I get that right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I teach people
Mm-hmm.
this tool, I usually tell them to think of three things that you want more of or less of in the relationship. And it could be a combination. So, and I teach them how to be specific. So instead of saying, I want us to communicate more, you might say something like, well, I would like it if we could talk at the dinner table as a family instead of watching
That's
television.
good. That's good.
And so when
Mm-hmm.
you bring that communication, you would state what you want, the person would reflect back what they heard and ask, did I get that right? And if they got it right, if they didn't get it right, you would say, as a communicator, you would say, no, this is what I said. And a lot of times when I
Mm-hmm.
do this exercise with couples, almost always the first time they don't get it right because they're not actively listening. They're
Mm-hmm.
forming their response, they're forming a rebuttal. And so then they miss much of what their partner has said. But if
Right.
you write, then you would ask, as the receiver of the communication, you would ask, uh, what can I do? No, you would ask, how would you feel about our relationship if this wish came true? And so then the
Mm.
communicator would use a feelings word, an emotions word. I would feel loved, I would feel heard, things like that. And then you would reflect back as a receiver, you would reflect back.
Mm-hmm.
So what I hear you say is you would feel loved and you would feel heard. And did I
Mm.
get it right? And if they got it right, then the person would ask, and this last part, this isn't in the assessment that prepare enrich design. This is a little piece that I added. You would ask, what can I do to make this wish come true for you?
Mm.
Then you, as a communicator, try to have a behavior. So you would answer with a behavior. Well, what you can do is sit down when I'm talking with you instead of multitask.
I
Because when
like that.
you're talking, I think that you're kind of half listening to me. And so then the person would reflect back. So you want me to sit down and look at you
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking to me. Did I get that right?
Right.
And
Oh, I
so, but
love it.
person as a communicator, this is another piece that I added. When
Okay.
you see that your partner does that, when your partner takes the time to sit down and listen to you and talk with you, then you would offer praise. Hey babe, I asked for this the other day and I noticed that you did it today. So thank you so much for following through on that. And so
That's
what this
important.
tool does, yeah, what this tool does, it keeps you on the same page. It keeps
Mm-hmm.
on topic and on course, and it minimizes the potential for conflict and for going off the rails in your discussion and feeling like you can't communicate, because you can communicate,
Mm-hmm.
you can resolve
I love
conflict.
that. I
Mhm.
love that. And it's fun too when you're doing it. It's actually fun. I remember we couldn't get it right the first couple times that we did it. We just could not get on the same level. Because I'm here, he's there, then he's there and I'm here, and you'd have to keep jumping in and saying, "Guys, hold on, that's Alfred, hold on, that's not what she meant. This is what she said." So it's fun too.
Mhm.
Let's talk about your book, Tracy.
Oh, thank
Congratulations, by the way. I am
you.
extremely proud of you. I cannot wait to read it. Talk about your book. What's the name of it? Where can they find it? When's the release date? Come on, give us the juicy information.
Okay, so thank you for that. The name of my book is Many Voices, One Truth. And
Mm,
it's a book about belief, and it helps you to sift through all the competing noises that competes for the voice of Christ. Like, I believe
mm,
that God is always speaking to us. He speaks to us in a
mm-hmm,
still small voice. So in the book, what I use is the analogy of broadcast networks. When I grew up, we didn't have all of the different stations that we have today. We only had ABC, NBC, CBS, and PBS. So I
mm-hmm,
use the analogy of those broadcast networks to teach people how to differentiate between the different voices. And the voices are self,
mm,
Satan, society, and Savior.
mm,
And so I take tools that I use in my therapy practice to help people restructure how they think about things. And I marry them with tools that I've learned either on prayer retreats or in a lesson or two at church or whatever.
mm-hmm,
And show people how to tell the difference between the different voices, because all these voices are constantly playing, like the self,
mm-hmm,
all of the tapes that you had growing up, whether they are positive or negative. So sometimes the self can be a subsidiary of either the Satan or society voice or of God's voice. Satan is the
mm,
enemy of your soul, and he talks to you too. Like he gives you thoughts,
mm-hmm. Taunt you.
messages in your mind to try to get you off track, to try to
Yep.
his big purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy, which is what the Bible
Yes.
says. And so a lot of times many of the negative things that, come into your mind are coming from that particular network. And then society is the media, social media, comparison, things that you see, and then you find a
Yeah.
lot of yourself. And so, of course, then there's
That's
the Savior.
awesome.
Like Jesus will always redirect, orient you back to home, like back to north. So in the book, I'm teaching people how to differentiate between the different kinds of voices. And then I give them tools on how to tune down or turn off the voices that interfere with that of the Savior's voice. And it's going to be released
I'm
in
so excited. Can't wait to read it.
Oh yeah, yeah. So the release date is November. I want it to be probably mid-November. Like my agent and I have not decided fully yet, but yeah, so I'll be talking about it. You can follow me on my social media platforms. TracyTaris.com is my website. You can go on there and sign up for my email list, and you'll get emails because I will be writing on different aspects of the book in there.
Okay, Tracy, that's awesome. I'm so happy for you and so proud. Can you tell people where they can find you if they want to book a session with you? I know you do them, you do Zooms, you do lives, you also do phone sessions. Where can people find you?
So we have an office located in Santa Clarita, California. We're in the little town of Newhall. And we also offer telehealth services, which is much like this. It's kind of like Zoom, except that it's more confidential and it's HIPAA compliant, and it allows us to have a session just like this, where we can talk about what's going on. And if in a pinch, we can do over the phone as well, but primarily in person and via telehealth. I'm on Instagram,
Wow.
healing the mind and spirit. That's the name of my private practice. And then also Tracy
Mm.
Taris, TracyTaris. Those are Instagram. And I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. And I have a YouTube channel. Oh, and I have TikTok.
Awesome. Tracy, what I like to have every guest do before we wrap up an episode is to leave the listeners with a very motivational nugget, is what I like to say, and something that really speaks to them directly. So, can you speak to the listeners out there, that person that may be on the verge of giving up, that person who doesn't believe in themselves, that person that can't find help anywhere? What do you say to that person out there, Tracy?
Okay. Well, the thing that comes to mind is earlier in the program when you were talking about that time when you were having suicidal thoughts. One of the
Mm-hmm.
things that I want people to know about suicidal thoughts is it's often a symptom of deep, deep depression. Like when people come in and they say I'm depressed, one of the things I let them know is that depression is a cluster of symptoms. It starts with sadness or an inability to experience joy, and then a lot of these other symptoms are added on. Withdrawing, social isolation, overeating or undereating, oversleeping, undersleeping. And then it's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
happens on a continuum where it starts over here. But then when you get to the other end of the continuum, you might start having symptoms of worthlessness or hopelessness
Mm-hmm.
and suicidal ideation. So if you're having suicidal thoughts, know that that's one of the that's the symptom that's towards the end of the spectrum. And when I ask people who are suicidal, if this wasn't occurring and this wasn't happening and this wasn't happening, would you still want to commit suicide? And every time they
Mm.
say something like no. And so what we do is we address what is going on in your life, in your thought life, in your behaviors that need to be addressed so that you can find healing, because suicide is a permanent situation to
Mm.
temporary problems. And so you have to figure
Yes.
out, how do you get back to you? Because you were created in the image of God, which means that
Mm.
you are full of life, you're full of love, you're full of joy. And if you're not feeling those powerful, elevated emotions, not that you need to be feeling them all the time, but if you're not, then something's getting in the way of that. Having suicidal thoughts doesn't necessarily mean you want to kill yourself. It just means that you want
Yeah.
the pain to stop. So you have to address the pain.
Mm.
The suicidal ideation will subside, the hopelessness will subside, the worthlessness will subside, as well as the other symptoms on that depression continuum.
Right. And
So
listen,
there,
if I can make it out of this, guys, you can make it out of it. Get
yes.
help, seek help. Don't be embarrassed. Do not be embarrassed to better your life,
Yeah.
because no one else is going to do it for you. You have to
Yeah.
do it. You have to make that choice to get help, because
Yeah.
people can tell you till they're black and blue in the face, you need this, you need that, you got to do this, you got to do that. But the change starts with us, guys. It starts within. So
Yeah.
get help, seek a mentor, find you a therapist, find you someone in the church that you can go to, but just know that you're not alone. And find your divine circle.
And also, I'd like to add a lot of Christians are hesitant to go to therapy, but we confess to God for salvation. And James says we confess to each other for healing. So give yourself the permission to
Mm.
reach out for therapy. Give yourself the permission to reach out so that you can find the healing that, God intends for you to have.
Wow, that was so powerful right now. Thank you so much, Tracy. I think the world needed to hear that last thing that you had to say, because I
Yeah.
remember I was told not to go to therapy by the church, and I did it anyways. When I found out you were Holy Spirit led, I did it anyways, and I needed it. I needed it, and you understood what I needed, and I came out of that. And after I had to remember, you even came to my sip and see, and I was like, wow, I can't believe I even had those thoughts that I wasn't going to love her as much as my son. I love her. Like, oh my, so thank you so much, you guys. Thank you so much for listening to Divine Circle. Tracy, it was an honor to have you on the show today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Divine Circle. We'll see you on the next one.